really happy with all the busyness we've been having that David and I have been on the background to connect again and have him come back around for a meeting with us. So, really excited to have you here, David. Thank you for being and taking time out of your busy afternoon as well. I asked you to come back around and talk with our group because we saw a couple of updates come out, and it's just a good time of year to be checking in. I know there's legislation sessions going on, policy changes, and it's always good to have you in the room. So thanks, David, for joining us. Um, Before I do pass it over to you to go ahead and provide updates to everyone on the call this afternoon, I just want to take a quick moment. I'm not going to go through PowerPoint because I've been doing that in the past and everyone's like, Beth, we know about this. We know where your website is. We want to get to the meat and potatoes. So I just want to say for anyone that is on the call today, because this is our open meeting, I always want to just introduce myself. Beth Caro, I'm President and CEO of NIVTA, our National Independent Vehicle Title Agents. And we are a group that helps to foster education, best practices, and fraud prevention with the third parties and anyone, honestly, that's in the automotive sector touching vehicle titles and registration. So if you haven't had a chance to check out our website, it's easy enough. It's nivta.org. I am looking forward to seeing a lot of you that are on the call next week down at AMVA's e-titling forum in Savannah, Georgia. So if you're headed there, drop a chat. Maybe we can connect while we are there together on site. I'd love to see you in person. And I know that there's many of you on the call, like Nikki and I got a chance to connect earlier today, and we're going to have coffee while we're together there next week. So it's all about community. It's about passing on that information, connecting with each other is why we're here. So David, again, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to go ahead and do that official to tap you into the conversation. Want everyone to know, this is open. If you have a question, please pause us, raise a hand, find out, ask that question that you need assistance with. And David's one of those that he might not be able to answer right away. He will help you get an answer to the question, like he's done many a times for myself. So David, if you want to come off mute, introduce yourself. It would be lovely to have you share your background and the role that you play with the Michigan Secretary of State.
Well, thank you, Beth. I appreciate that. And I appreciate everybody's time, the opportunity to come and chat with you today. By way of introduction, my name is Dave Richmond. I am the manager of the Vehicle Record Program section for the Michigan Secretary of State. For most of you, I'm sure you're aware that the Secretary of State's office in Michigan is the DMV agency. We're responsible for all of the titling and registration work for vehicles in the state of Michigan. My specific program area handles those. We're responsible for the integrity of the vehicle record. So we are the stewards of those records, kind of from the point when they enter the state and they come in for processing all the way through to the back end and ensuring that those records reflect the correct and proper ownership information. We handle all the corrections for those and everything related to that activity. We're also instrumental in developing policies and procedures for the processing of those title applications and the registration processes that the department handles. So to that end, there have been a couple of policy changes that have been recently implemented on the vehicle side that Beth had kind of alluded to that I wanted to just go over very briefly. And then I'm happy to, of course, answer any questions that come out of that presentation. So I think the first place that I'd like to start would be to just kind of walk through and review a procedure change that we put in place back in October of last year, dealing with applications that come into the state of Michigan that are accompanied by a dealer reassignment form. We had been grappling with out-of-state reassignment forms for a while. I know that, obviously every jurisdiction handles them differently. We updated our procedure in October so that if the chain of ownership for a vehicle includes an out-of-state reassignment form, there must be a dealer in that ownership chain for that vehicle from the same state that reassignment form is from. When those come into a dealer, and they buy those at auction or they otherwise assume ownership of those vehicles, the Michigan dealer at that point is required to apply for a resale title in their name, regardless of whether or not there are open reassignments either on the title itself or on that reassignment form that's accompanying the title. And that resale title has to be issued, and the ownership has to be updated to that dealer's name prior to that dealer being eligible to sell that vehicle. Michigan dealers cannot reassign ownership using a separate reassignment form post October of last year. So that was the major thrust of that change. For vehicles that are subject to the federal odometer law, the reassignment form that's used must be on a safety paper or some secure document that's issued by the state, unless it's New York and Indiana has some uniqueness. I'll come back and talk about those two exceptions. And that serialized, and the safety paper reassignment form has to also contain a conforming odometer statement. It does not contain any sort of requirement for a serialized control number or anything like that. It just has to be on that safety paper. So I mentioned there are a couple of exceptions to that. I'll start with Indiana because obviously Michigan has geographic proximity. We do receive quite a high volume of vehicles from Indiana. Indiana's title reassignment form is not on safety paper. It does not contain a conforming odometer statement. We do accept the Indiana reassignment form, but only for older vehicles that are not subject to the odometer disclosure. So that's an important distinction I want to highlight just to help everybody understand that it's not a broad negative, we're rejecting all those. It's only for those that require that odometer disclosure. The other thing I would mention regarding these reassignment forms is New York. New York issues this wholesale certificate. I think it's called a wholesale certificate of sale receipt. And that prints out on plain paper. It's not a secure document. When that is issued, there is an electronic reassignment that includes a secure odometer disclosure that's filed with the New York DMV. Because of that, we do accept those New York certificates of sale receipt. So those are still being accepted even with this change. So that's kind of a broad overview on that particular change that we made. I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any now, or we can kind of move into the next one and let you kind of let that stew. If there are any questions, I'm happy to try and address those now if folks have
I have
any.
a question.
Sure.
Quick question. With respect to manufactured housing dealers, is there any difference in the deal, on a manufactured housing dealership? Title reassignment.
You're talking about like a mobile home, right?
Yeah. Yep.
I'm going to be completely honest with you. We've never had one come in. Now, let me take that back. We have not had one come in since we've changed this policy in October. So
okay.
I think the question you're asking is, would we allow for a reassignment form to be used if there was an open reassignment?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
I will check with my procedure folks. I'm inclined to say no, just because when possible, we try and maintain consistency across all title activities. Okay. So I'm inclined to say no, but that's not definitive. So I can definitely get you an answer, and I can reach back out to Beth and she can pass that along.
Perfect.
Fantastic.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, David. And I'll just take a quick moment while David's making that note, just to remind everyone that is attending today and is on our attendee list, will get a copy of the recording link to our YouTube, and they will also get any notes that come back from David with answers to questions. So Karen will make sure that you have that mobile home question, because I know that you do a lot of that in your office.
Yeah, we have a lot in Michigan, so.
I would say, David, I do have a quick question. Have you, or just more curious, because the New York wholesale retail certificate, that's in lieu of a reassignment. I'm just curious on a fraud point. Have you seen, because that was a whole new thing that New York did. And I'm just curious, have you seen a lot of fraud come out of that, or has it been?
So we haven't, and I'll tell you why. When those come in, they're bounced against the Verify webpage that New York maintains that provides us kind of evidence of the title and the information that's being presented. So as long as it verifies there, then we assume that it's good. So the fact that they provided that tool is what allows us to accept that document. So, if it doesn't verify or if there's a problem, then we have an additional conversation with the applicant.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always hard because, here, my main jurisdiction state being Maryland, we had a lot of this through our safety inspection changes where we went from carbon copy, little 6x8 pieces of paper the inspector would sign off to now people just have a receipt and it's in a system. But I will tell you from my experience and my background processing at the desk, those check verification systems are just a lifesaver, and I was curious and I was happy to hear your immediate response. So, okay.
Yep, that's how we run them. All right, so let me move on to the next policy change. And this one is a little bit more substantive for folks because there may not be as increased level of awareness. Last month, Michigan updated its policy regarding odometer corrections on vehicle titles. So I think it's a fair generalization to say that nothing's changed in regards to when an application is received, and if a title is noted after the title is issued, and we have evidence that the title was subject to error due to an employee error. We miskeyed something. There was something that was erroneously entered on our part. Nothing's changed in that regard. It's pointed out to us. We obviously issue a corrected title at no fee, and things will continue on kind of in the vein that they always have been. More directly impacted are applications for correction where it was not due to departmental error and the title has already been issued. And what we did last month is we stood up a new policy that basically requires a legitimate reason for correcting the mileage. A legitimate reason may be anything from I was putting the number in and I wrote down 100,000 and it was supposed to be 10,000, or I recorded the decimal place, the tenths of the miles in error on the face of the title, or my odometer, reports both kilometers and miles, and I wrote down the kilometers. So any of those that are legitimate reasons to be corrected. Prior to this change in policy, we had a number of problems, and many of them were quite clearly mileage disclosures that were estimated at the time they were provided. And we wanted to clarify that claiming mileage in a good faith guess does not accord with the requirements of the Truth in Mileage Act, and that moving forward, we were going to be unable to correct those subject to a correction title application being proffered. Now, that all being said, when we stood this up, we kind of created this new process of how an applicant actually applies for a correction on their odometer reading on the title. And the way that works is that the customer, the applicant, has to provide a number of documents that accompany that correction title application. They have to provide two service records for the vehicle that come from a licensed dealer or a repair facility or an oil change service provider. And on those records, they have to clearly provide evidence of the date of service, the VIN, and the mileage of that vehicle at the time of service. For those vehicle owners who may do their own oil changes or they do their own repairs and they don't have access to that, the alternative document requirement to that would be a vehicle history report from any of the NIVTA provided or approved data providers. And that report must be dated within 90 days of the application to correct the mileage. For dealers who are applying to have an odometer error corrected, they have to provide a copy of an updated application for title signed by the vehicle owner, a copy of the validated application for title that was originally submitted that created that title that was issued, and they have to also submit a new application for a corrected title. So in addition to those things, the dealer also has to provide that history report from that approved NIVTA data provider within the 90-day window, further providing some documentary proof to the allegation that they reported the wrong odometer at the time of application for title. Once they kind of bundle that together, then they transition into the other documents that we provide for them to complete with that application for correction title. The vehicle owner completes a certification statement, basically explaining the reason why they need the correction and how they want it corrected, what the accurate reading should be. They have to provide something from the previous owner, who would have been the party responsible for declaring the mileage disclosure at the time of transfer, that explains how the error happened on their part. And then finally, if they do have a issue title, that has to be returned along with that application packet. That all comes back to my unit. We centrally review and evaluate 100% of those correction applications that come in, regardless if they come in to a branch office, to our internal work unit for out-of-state processing. All of those come to us so that we can ensure that they get the appropriate review and determination on the application for correction. So I just dumped a lot of information. I'm going to stop there and answer any questions if any come to mind regarding that change in the policy for odometer corrections.
Thanks, David, for that explanation. Appreciate that.
Yep.
I don't have anyone jumping right off, but this is a new policy. Maybe was anyone familiar with this going out? See if anyone was paying attention last month.
Right.
David, what's the name of your department specifically?
The Vehicle Record Program Section.
Record. So my takeaway is don't make any odometer mistakes in Michigan.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's probably fair to say it's not just Michigan. You know, we had conversations with colleagues across the country, and this is something that, you know, a lot of jurisdictions are grappling with. So we're trying to pull ourselves in line with a lot of other states.
I know. I was just being.
Nope.
I was just being funny.
I get it.
Oh, we got to lighten up at one point with all the stuff that we deal with on our desk. I would say too, you know, David, yeah, right, Karen. David, the fact that, you know, you bring up the two proofs from the repair shops or a licensed dealer. Very good point. That's something that we follow in Maryland. So just to kind of bounce that back and say, you know, how you're saying it's similar in other jurisdictions of this taking place, we have to follow the same exact, you know, someone can't just be doing oil changes out back on a piece of loose leaf paper and say, this is the mileage. Right. But it's good. And I appreciate you bringing up the NIVTA tool for record checks as well, because that's also really helped us out to provide an extra layer of due diligence or proof. So, you know, any of those lookup tools that we can just do from our desk online saves a lot of aggravation.
Well, that's good to hear.
Definitely.
Okay. Moving on. I've got one last item that I wanted to share with the group, and this is a little bit more future looking, but I'm going to just mention it so you have some awareness. Michigan is in the process of updating our application for title to make it ADA compliant. We have already started and have kind of progressed to the point where we're reviewing drafts of that document. Unfortunately, I don't have a release date. That hasn't been determined yet, but I would be shocked if it's going to be longer than a 6-month window. So, you know, once we get to a point where that's been released and we're kind of transitioning, I'll be sure to loop back with Beth so she can let everybody know that as of whatever date we land on, there's going to need to be a transition for folks to start using the new form. So just like I said, for awareness purposes, you can make a note of that so that when you do hear about it, hopefully it doesn't come as a complete surprise.
Yeah, that would be great, David. I appreciate that. You know, this is why I really appreciate the fact that you've taken time to keep me posted on updates so we can share that with the community, because if we can know within our stores and offices that the cutoff is this particular time for that title application, will save from a lot of rejections.
Yep.
So,
100%.
Yep. Is there, you know, I think Colorado might have been the last jurisdiction that was doing major form updates around ADA compliance. Do you mind me asking, is this something that's kind of going across the country in many jurisdictions, or is it kind of just one-off based on where everyone is?
My understanding is that this is a pretty significant undertaking that most jurisdictions are kind of involved in. You know,
Mhm.
I don't have a real accurate handle on kind of who's where on the spectrum of doing this, but anecdotally, based on conversations I've had with my colleagues in other states, it definitely seems to be something that a lot of states are currently evaluating or are planning to evaluate in the very near future.
True. Outside of the title application, David, do you expect any other forms to change? Because I know Colorado had a whole list of them when that occurred. So,
Yes, I think just for full disclosure purposes, we're in the midst of an evaluation of a top to bottom review of kind of everything,
okay,
publications, forms, everything that we have that's a printed document is currently or is planning to be reviewed at some point in the immediate future.
that's good to hear. I'm sure that'll give an opportunity to get some things updated and better placed on forms too,
Yeah,
just in general.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I also, Mary put in the chat, David, I don't know if you saw, but she said the same thing in Pennsylvania back to those, the proofs from the shop for odometer corrections. She says the same thing, and they do not accept the Carfax or etc., like record reports like that. So that's interesting. Mary, yep,
Yeah, and it is, and to harken back to what you said about the folks who are changing their oil in their backyard, it's going to be a little bit more difficult, I would imagine, for them to obtain that documentation if they're doing their own service work.
right. I wonder if now I know typically we might have to send customers to the state police or the state police comes to them to do VIN inspections. Would that play a role at all in those odometers? Just to go back to that, I guess, for a quick second, David. Just curious if that's another option. Just putting that out there because I've seen, I think, some jurisdictions and areas accept state police sign-offs on forms.
So we do have a form that requires it's a VIN inspection, basically that requires law enforcement sign off. At the risk of going out on a limb and speaking for them, which I'm not purporting to do, I do know that they generally dislike doing that because it takes them away from their primary duties. I'm
Makes
I'm
sense.
loath I'm loath to add this to the list of things that we would expect them to complete for us, just because we know that we're already asking a lot of them as far as resource management requests to try and get them to do the VIN inspection. So, we didn't contemplate that. It's not to say it's not something that we're not willing to take a look at, but I
Yep.
don't hold a lot of confidence that that's something that they would be eager to do for us.
Yeah, I know that does put a lot on them, so that completely makes sense. But just felt I'd bring that up since Mario's mentioned things going on in PA too.
Sure. No,
Yeah.
that's valuable. It's a good thought.
Yep. Does anyone else want to jump in? I know I'm watching the chat, so if you don't want to come off mute or if you're unable to, feel free to use that too. But anyone else want to jump in on anything that they're having a question, concern, comment? And if not, that's fine too. All right, they seem silent, David. I think that they're appreciating the information that you're sharing today.
Well, again, I
I have a
appreciate your
question.
opportunity. Yeah, go
Oh,
ahead.
we got
I,
one.
I have one question. If you have a situation where obviously the odometer is not exempt and there's a discrepancy, let's say you're given a Michigan title and it says 25,000 miles even, right? Somebody estimated the mileage, that we see all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And the new purchaser, whether it's a dealer or an individual, is not able to get enough for Michigan to make this correction for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
If he or she decided that they would be okay with the odometer being now recorded on the new transfer as not actual mileage, is that okay? I mean, is Michigan
100%.
going to allow that?
100%.
Even if
Yep.
it goes backwards, even if
Yeah.
they put in 24,300 miles, not actual, it's fine, it's acceptable.
It
Or how
is.
about if they, okay, wonderful.
Yeah, and one of the things that we've been kind of trying to help our branch staff explain to customers is that's always an option to choose the not actual. However, we need to raise public awareness that once it's branded as not actual, that brand stays on that title record for the life of the vehicle.
Yeah, and
So,
it diminishes the value of the
of
vehicle
course, yep,
frequently.
absolutely, absolutely. You know, what we don't want to have happen is to have a customer go that route and then at some point subsequent, either with that owner or a subsequent owner, attempt to roll that not actual into an actual brand. And that's something that we will not do.
Gotcha. Oh, one last question I just thought of, and that's it. So if you have in Michigan, if you have a stolen vehicle situation, insurance company, the vehicle maybe has not been recovered, the insurance company applies for a salvage title, they probably listed the odometer as maybe 99999, not actual, because they don't have the vehicle to read the odometer, right? It hasn't been recovered. But then the vehicle is recovered, and it's recovered intact. Is that an exception to what you just said? Will then Michigan allow a new title be issued with actual mileage?
I'd be inclined to say no, and I'll tell you why. Because at that point, we're reverting back to accepting an estimation on the mileage disclosure, which quite candidly violates the certification that they're making on the federal disclosure. So, you know, the goal of the implementation of the policy change was to ensure that we're no longer allowing for estimated disclosures to be corrected. You know, what we would be more inclined to look at, I'm not suggesting this would be approved, would be show me recent records from the owner of the vehicle so the insurance company has a number to provide on the application for title, you know, salvage title in their name. Then should that be incorrect, we at least have documentary evidence of where the number came from that they put on the application. So
in other words, when we're making application for salvage title in Michigan, the actual application for salvage title in Michigan on a vehicle that has not been recovered, a stolen vehicle that's not been recovered, you're saying that if the owner says, yeah, well, when they stole it, it had about, had 24,300 miles on it, you would rather, do you want the insurance company, you're suggesting the insurance company list that odometer reading on the application for salvage? Maybe I misunderstood.
Yeah, no,
even though they haven't recovered the vehicle?
Right. We would prefer that in lieu of 99999, a number be given that's derived from some sort of documentary evidence of a recent service or a recent transaction that reflects or shows up on a vehicle record from Carfax or AutoCheck. So, if you're filling out something on behalf of the insurance company, part of the insurance company's, documentation of closure of that case should include something from the previous owner saying, I need something showing me, a document that shows me what the recent mileage was, oil change, service, something, so that they have some evidence to back up why they're giving us the number that they are on the odometer disclosure.
But then still mark the not actual mileage box because they haven't recovered it?
Okay, so that gets into an interesting question. The issue I would have, or the concern I would have with marking it as not actual, which to your point, I would agree is accurate, is that should it be marked not actual, it negates the need to ever correct it because it's never going to be actual. So I'm not suggesting that you do or don't. I'm just simply saying, be cautious when you decide whether or not it's actual or not actual. That being said, I recognize that you don't have the actual mileage, right?
Right.
So,
and that's what I hear my insurance companies asking me. Well, you want us to sign something attesting to mileage on a vehicle we don't have.
And I think
what I mean?
The counter I would offer to that is they seem to be perfectly fine signing it at 99999.
Right, but I mean, I think that's just that's the nomenclature, right? That in the industry, everybody understands it's not rateable.
So let me ask you this.
Able to be read.
Let me ask you this. When they apply for an application for title and they're completing it with all nines, are they checking the not actual box?
Yes.
Okay. So I think then I would suggest they maintain doing that. And if they check the not actual box, we would prefer them to provide it with a closer estimation of what it was based on whatever they can obtain from the vehicle owner that they're making whole as part of that settlement.
Okay. Okay. That's a good suggestion. Thank you very much.
Yep. Thank you.
Good questions, Karen. Thanks for chiming in on that. Bring some more to the conversation. David, did you have any other updates to go over, or was that the last? I think that was the last, right?
Yep, that was what I had. Yep.
Perfect. David, do you mind me asking, are you going to be attending the e-forum next week for AMVA? Are you going to be there by chance?
I am not, unfortunately. We had a full boat of folks, so we have other folks that are going to attend.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. I just wanted to see if you were going to be there on site so I could look out for you. But I think that these conversations, and I appreciate you bringing up things that are coming down the pipeline because that helps us to prepare, especially going through form changes. It's been, I will say from my personal standpoint, working with Michigan DMV, I've had, a pretty fluid process. It's also been good too. Some of the reps when I've been calling in lately, just to give some positive feedback from the community that I wanted to share today too, is, they've been pretty upfront about where they're at for processing with the work that's come in. I think last week I caught in, they were like, we should be here, but we're about 3 days behind, but they're very upfront to be very to be helpful and to be able to be pinpointed on our questions when we call in. So I just wanted to kind of add that in and see if anyone else had any other kind of experience recently with a Michigan transaction, the Michigan DMV. These are some of the things that just helps us keep moving forward, keeps the file from just sitting on the desk. We can get it taken care of and move on to the next thing. Anyone have any feedback or any transactions else that they want to bring up specific on Michigan? You guys are quiet this afternoon. That's
sure
okay. Yeah, they are. David, it's because we've got
always come up with more.
Oh, thank you, Karen. The brave
I'm
one.
just kidding.
No, it's good. I mean, I think too, sometimes, when I put out that we're doing a webinar too with a jurisdiction directly like this, sometimes it's just quiet and we're going to sit in the audience, David, and just listen to what's coming. And then we have our conversation back and forth, and then I send you an email. So that's fine too. Everyone's learning, everyone's on different places in our sector and what they're doing. So we just appreciate your support and knowing that you're there if we have a quick question.
Absolutely. And you've got my
David
contact
going to be
info.
dropping? Oh yeah, I was going to say.
Karen, go ahead. You've got a question. No. Jump in, Karen. You're good. We're not
I
wrapping
said,
up.
is he going to be dropping his contact information in the chat or?
David,
I
would you
can
be okay
happy to do that. Yep, happy to do that.
Okay.
Great.
Fantastic.
Great. Yep. And everyone, this is David's second time on one of our webinars. So I'm really honored to have one of our jurisdictions participate like this. So David, thank you so much. There's a lot to the things that we're doing back and forth, sending things to your state from, Karen, who's on the line, she's down in Florida, I'm in Maryland. And, we're all having so many cross-border sales. So it's been great to be able to open up these webinars to just kind of give everybody a moment to see what else do they have going on in other jurisdictions and talk about it. So, thank you, David, for sharing that.
Thank you to that.
Yeah, absolutely. But, David's kind of wrapped up everybody in the attendee area. So David's kind of wrapped up on his updates, and, we can open this up to other discussion, other questions, concerns that are going on that you're seeing. I can share with you guys one scenario that Nikki and I were on the call earlier today that happened in my world. Temp tags. I've had more reach out recently on challenges around temporary tags and things that are going on. And I had noticed that working on site with one of my dealerships, one of the salespeople issued 2 temp tags to 2 different VIN numbers. And so things like that are popping up all over the place. It's so easy to miss key information. But the point that I was just really trying to drive home is that, it's all over where everybody is and what's happening. And I think the biggest thing is that we all just kind of take a moment and pause. And that's what I've talked about with this sales team here on this.
We lost your audio, Beth.
We can push and try to get the next customer taken care of. Oh, you good, Nikki?
Oh, we hear you. Yeah.
Oh, someone said something.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, good. All right. Okay, thank you. So anyhow, dealing with some dealership things, and we're dealing with temporary tags, so basically the point that I was trying to drive home was just, everyone just has to kind of slow down a bit, pay attention to the data that's in front of them. And the more that I'm finding is because we've got this hybrid blend of electronic and paper going on. And, there's a lot of things. It's like the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing sometimes at our desk or in our industry. So today, had to have a quick moment with this team here to talk about temp tags and make sure you're paying attention. So one person's not coming in and getting a bunch of easy pass and flags on their account and record. So has anyone else been having a crazy day like me about temporary tags?
I've been having a crazy week, but not about temporary tags.
Oh, Karen, right? All right, everyone's pretty quiet this afternoon. I can release you guys early. That's completely fine. I do want to say, Karen, I appreciate you bringing up those questions because I know that there's a lot of different types of units we deal with. I can't even say just vehicles because mobile homes technically not in that area. And the mobile homes, that's a whole different process at our desk. And I think we find so many different variations where, yes, it's title and registration, but we may have an off-road vehicle. We may have, a bus. We could have a mobile home like you're dealing with, Karen. So it's good to talk about and discuss what's on our desk.
Well, I have one more question for David since Nova, I'm not monopolizing the conversation here. Nobody seems to have any questions. David, I have a question. I know that for a while, Michigan was a hot state that was being used for titling Canadian imports. Is that still the case?
Yes, I think, if for no other reason than geographical, we do have a high volume of vehicles that are imported. We obviously work with CBP and the feds in ensuring that all of their requirements are met and that they're using registered importers. Unless it's,
Right.
the ones or twos that are the private vehicle owners that are bringing them across. But yes, we have an inordinately high number of vehicles that are imported from Canada.
So I guess here's my follow-up question to that, and that's something that I've seen. I haven't seen it lately, and I didn't know if maybe there have been some changes, but in the past, what we saw were a lot of vehicles is coming through, getting Michigan titles that actually weren't, they weren't actually landing. The vehicles themselves weren't landing in Michigan. Is Michigan a like wheels on the ground state with respect to titling?
So I am aware, and this goes back probably a good 2, maybe 3 years now, that there were a lot of vehicles that was kind of the use case that we were confronting. We did implement, in working with the feds, a number of changes to the application requirements for those imported vehicles, both at the feds' request and some of it at ours as well, to get at a number of issues, one of which was this alleged vehicle never landing here and just kind of passing through, if you will. To be completely honest with you, have not heard that has been an issue since we've made those changes. But I'm happy to poke around and see if other folks are kind of hearing that's bubbling up again. I mean, are you experiencing that we're issuing titles to vehicles that don't seem to be Michigan cars?
Yeah, well, yes and no. We had some clients that the vehicles are coming to Florida and they're coming over, we're a big import state, right? And maybe Canada, believe it or not, and they were coming in from Canada, they were coming across the border and being shipped down here. to Florida dealers, and we were of course obtaining titles in Florida, converting the Canadian registration transaction into a Florida title following our import process. And we had a client say, "Oh no, we're titling them now in Michigan again." And I knew this was a thing, like you're saying, 2-3 years ago. And I was under the impression that Michigan had made some changes that didn't allow for, I guess they were using a P.O. box address or like one of those UPS store addresses, from what I understood. And then we've had clients saying, "Oh no, we've got somebody titling these all in Michigan." So I was curious if something had changed again, or if somebody has just found another loophole.
Well, and that's always a possibility.
Workaround.
Yeah, that's always a possibility. But if there's something that you're aware of and you have instances or information that would be helpful for us, or you want us to look into something, obviously feel free to share that, and I'm happy to pass that along. We have a whole business area that deals with that. So I'm happy to have them take a look at it.
Fantastic. That was kind of why I was asking for contact information. So
Happy to do it.
Thanks.
Yep. Thanks, Karen, for catching those things. I know there's a lot that goes on in your state that we discuss around fraud, and you keep an eye on it and what's popping up. So.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. David, they must be sleeping this afternoon. I'm just teasing. I'm not picking on you guys. You guys have been in the chat, so, And
I had my coffee this morning.
You had your coffee. I know you drink espresso though, Karen. So you have a whole different kind of coffee.
I'm in Florida, it's Cuban coffee.
No, but I think what you brought up was good for conversation. So I'm sure everybody listening on the call, it probably helped play a role in something that they had touched, for sure. So David, anything else that you'd like to share with the group? I don't want to put you on the spot, but I just want to make sure, is there anything else? And I'm seeing a chat. I'm sorry. I'm seeing these chats come in, David. And yes, it's been a long week, everybody. But David, I wanted to just ask, is there anything that we can be doing better for fraud prevention from your standpoint? That's something that I've been just trying to kind of take a moment to ask anyone that comes in, especially from the jurisdictions, because, there's some that are really pushing the DLDV. There's some that are, doing different things with NIVTA to protect from fraud. But is there anything that you would like to share with the community that may be a good best practice that we can take away from today's call that you've been dealing with?
Yeah, not specific. And I appreciate the question. I think one thing I'll share, and this is, just off the top of my head because it's something that came in just this week. We apparently have been encountering a high volume of titles from Montana that seem to be subject to odometer tampering. So I don't know if that's something that anybody has any awareness on or that you've heard of from any of the other jurisdictions. But that being said, it's just one of those things that I'll throw out there for group consumption. I don't know why Montana. I mean, I do know why because of the volume of titles that they're issuing, but I don't know why it seems to be those are being targeted, if it's something specific about their stock or otherwise. But it's something that has kind of crossed our desks in a higher than expected volume. And it's something that, I've just kind of been looped in on this week. So we're going to be taking a look at that to see if there's something going on there. But, other than that, there's nothing else that immediately comes to mind, but I appreciate the opportunity and the question.
Absolutely, David. Well, we just appreciate the time that we have with you because we know that you're busy. We know the role that you play there at the Secretary of State's office. And I just appreciate, honestly, the fact that we have this working relationship so we can pass this information back to the community. We have a fluid way of updating each other. So I really appreciate it. The chat, hey, they've been listening. Okay, David, you might think that they were quiet or they're napping on this afternoon, but no, they're all really appreciative of this information. And I felt the same way. Every time you come on, you always have a wealth of knowledge, David.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity.
Yep.
Okay, one more, David. On these Montana, I have a thought. Are you seeing that they are high value vehicles because I may have some insight into this.
I would love to hear what insight you have. I have not looked at these specific instances or the fact patterns. I don't know. What is not surprising when I tell you is that it appears that all of them seem to be a lower odometer reading than what is reported to NIVTA. So, shock of
Yeah.
shocks, don't fall out of your chair. But yeah, so that's kind of what prompted us to take a second look. But I haven't done a deep dive to kind of compare or glean vehicle information to those ones that we've caught.
Well, here's my two facts for you that may lead you in a direction on that. Number one, I have seen an increase in Canadian vehicles being titled in Montana. And it could be, RIs or dealers using, taking advantage of, loose odometer verification, or it could be that kilometers are getting recorded instead of mileage. I don't know. That's a thought. Number two, we have seen an uptick in, of course, Montana is a zero sales tax state, and there have been a lot of big car collecting groups that are going to Montana to title, because on these antique, specifically high value vehicles, maybe if it was coming out of another state that will not issue an odometer on anything over a certain age, but Montana will.
Yeah. That's
So that's why I'm curious if they're high value antique or antique vehicles.
Yeah, that's a great point. To that point, I'd share a couple of things. One, you're exactly right. If it's exempt from disclosure, we do not report, nor do we collect, nor do we produce an odometer reading on the title. So if you are a hardcore collector and you want that on your title, that's something that you may shop another state for to meet that demand. So you're right, that may be part of what's driving that. The other thing that I heard you say that kind of sparked some interest on my part is, because we have such a high volume of vehicles that are imported from Canada, we have a very stringent requirement on the entities that do the work to convert the odometers from kilometers to miles. It may not hold true for other states. So if you've got some importers or some third parties that are purporting to do that work, and they can go to a state that is not as highly regulated, there may be a business opportunity that they're taking advantage of. So that may be a contributing factor as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And I'll say too, Mary just added in the chat, she's not able to get onto her mic, so I wanted to make sure to pass this on, David, if you didn't see it. But she said lately she's been seeing a sharp rise in Montana titles. She's based in PA, and the vehicle's roughly having 30,000 miles on it being sold at auction, but their titles list the mileage as exempt.
Well, that's interesting.
I think let me jump in. I think there's a major dealership that's national that's processing all their title work out of Montana.
Yeah, they're running.
I don't want to say who they are because I don't want to sell them out, but that's what I've been told. So
okay, that would make sense.
It's a retail dealership.
Okay. Yeah, and I think that kind of goes into that whole getting these titles into the dealer's name, doing the dealer resale title process. David, I think a lot of the dealers have been trying to figure out how to solve that without going through the clearinghouse, or how are they going to go and do that versus letting titles just sit in their file drawers anymore, that are sitting there waiting for someone to order a duplicate or transfer ownership, and you never know. Right. We probably have about 40 files that are like that for used cars right now. So, I go in and I clean up a lot of businesses that get into those challenges or don't have the right staff to pay attention to what's going on. And it's been a lot of work.
Sure. Yeah. Each one's its own challenge.
Yeah. So if the title was just in the dealer's name, it would just be it would just make such a smooth process. But I also understand, the cost factor and other things from their community on that. So
Totally agree.
Yeah. Thank you guys for chiming in. This is great. Well, I think we're just a couple of minutes towards the end, David. For a moment, I thought we were going to drop off 20 minutes early, but look at this, guys. You just ramped right back up. We must have, I don't know, did we talk about fraud? What happened? I don't know. We'll have to catch a pulse on them later, David, to find out what it was.
I think it was the Canadian vehicles. That's what I think it was.
You think that's what it was?
Yep. Yep.
Well, David, so Karen, who's on the call, David, is the chair for NIVTA. So, she's someone that I trust greatly and someone great to work with on a lot of fraud topics. Her and I always have wonderful conversation to help each other. So just to kind of match that together for you as you guys are talking. But this has been a great conversation, everyone. David, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you just keeping us in the loop. We're going to do a recap after the e-titling forum is over. So next week we'll have a different host. It won't be me because I will be at the e-titling forum. So our vice chair, Tracy Lane, will be stepping in. She wasn't available to get in today. And then also we'll do a recap the very first beginning week of March to members on the e-titling forum and the changes that we're hearing about. So we're excited to share that. But if everyone could just give thumbs up, make some excitement for David jumping in today with us. We're really excited. I'm glad to see some of you chatting. Thank you, guys. See some of you chatting and saying that you're going to be attending. I look forward to seeing anyone's face next week. Catch me. I need espresso. I need coffee. I need to keep moving. It's Year of the Horse, guys. So let's gallop. Let's get it done. David, thank you again.
I'll bring some coffee.
Yeah, bring some coffee, Karen. Thanks, David, so
I'll
much.
bring some Cuban coffee with me.
Bring it with you, Karen. Oh, well, thank you guys so much. I wish we could hang on for longer, but I know we all have to get back and wrap up our day. That way we all can get home and have some dinner. So you guys take care. David, thank you again. We'll be in touch and I'll keep an eye out for your updates in the email.
Thanks, Beth. Thanks, everybody, for the opportunity. I appreciate your time.
Yep. Thank you so much.
Thank
you.
Have a great afternoon, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.